I think it's 10 a.m. here in Bangladesh, and I guess we'll start the session and we'll wait for others to come in the next few minutes, but we can start. So, my name is Riyadul Hussain, and I'm working as a program coordinator at the International Center for Climate Change and Development. And I'm delighted to welcome you all to today's Gobeshona conference session titled Linking Local Level Needs to National Plans and Priorities for Enhancing Climate Finance Effectiveness in Bangladesh. This session is being hosted by the International Center for Indian Development in cooperation with Bangladesh Center for Advanced Studies, Center for Climate Change and Environmental Research, Sustainable Rural Livelihoods, Coast Trust, and the ProCash program of the British Council. So, before I provide a rundown and overview of today's session, I just wanted to go over some house rules for participants. Firstly, please keep your microphone muted during the course of the session. Um Depending on how the session proceeds and then if time permits, we will have a Q&A session near the end where we will have the opportunity to hear from you. So you may raise your hand then and we'll give you the floor. Otherwise, it would be good if you left your comments or any questions you had in the chat box. We'll be keeping track of them, and we'll in the near the end we'll have a chance to respond to them or have a discussion around them. And in the chat box, you'll also find a link to a participant sign up sheet. It's a very brief, short information sheet. It's essentially to understand who's attending the session so that after the session, we can share with you any resources or materials or presentations that we have. And lastly, considering the theme of today's session, and we also have a number of local representatives from the ground who will be joining in today. So for certain parts of the session, we will be using a mixture of both English and Bengali for the proceedings of the discussions. So apologies for any inconvenience. However, what we will do is we'll try to provide translations where appropriate onto the chat box. At the same time, we will also produce a detailed event report, which will capture all the proceedings, and we will share it with you after in case you miss anything you can capture from those discussions. With that said, I will now try to provide a quick overview of today's session. Uh, so Uh, so, so Jewel, I can't change slides.
You have full access.
Sorry. Okay, never mind. So we'll begin the session with we have a keynote remark from Professor Mizan Arkan, who will basically provide an overarching idea on the session theme, setting the stage for discussions and presentations that will come ahead. Following which, we will have a couple of presentations from our local level partners, as well as apologies for the technical error. We will have a couple of presentations from some of the project partners who will share some of the efforts that are taken on the ground uh, to with working with local government and actors to enhance the access and utilization of climate finance in Bangladesh. We will also hear from a couple of local representatives who will share their experiences. In addition, after which we will have a guided discussion where we've invited some notable experts, and we have a panel of government representatives who will share their insights and experiences. And finally, we will have an open discussion Q&A session. Once again, we have a panel of experts who will reflect from the proceedings of the session and also share their ideas. So, having said that, I will now uh, hand over to Professor Mizan Arkan. So Professor Mizan Arkan is the Deputy Director at the International Center for Climate Change and Development. And more importantly, he's also been a long-time negotiator at the UNFCCC on climate finance. I would like, Mizan sir will basically talk about the theme of today's session, which is linking local level needs to national plans and priorities with a view to enhance climate finance effectiveness in Bangladesh. So over to you, Mizan sir.
Thank you, Riadat, and distinguished presenters and panelists, dear participants of today's session. This is an extremely important session because our whole conference theme is based on locally led adaptation. So first I will refer to some kind of semantic or linguistic confusion on this long formulation of the theme. The theme says that linking local level needs to national plans and priorities for effectiveness of climate finance, etc. So if we look at this, then I find that here national plans and policies priorities have been put as independent variable and national and local needs uh, as dependent variable. I think I will rather argue that these national plans and priorities strategies should be a reflection, rather the result of the local level needs and priorities. Because you all know adaptation is inherently local and regional specific. And so the national government's responsibility there is to ensure an enabling policy, legal, and institutional framework, which I believe and we can all see that in Bangladesh we have that enabling policy, legal, and institutional framework in the form of our strategies plans, even including a separate budget line for exclusively dedicated to climate finance. So we have all these. But for example, our NAP should be, as I always argue, should be an aggregation of the local level, regional level adaptation plans and priorities. And only then we can have better results from the limited resources that we have in terms of climate finance, both from international sources as well as from domestic sources. Now, as a negotiator, I will just refer to few points about the international scene. In terms of climate finance, international climate finance, we have a very, very dismal picture, you all know. Many of you, I believe, have gone through the latest reports of the OECD 2020 these years, as well as the shadow report, as always developed by Oxfam. Okay. And the picture there is not very good, not to talk of the $100 billion achievement, way below about $79 billion, but that is very much inflated as the Oxfam report shows. And the presenter from Oxfam has shown that. But I will just refer to two observations about this climate finance, adaptation finance, particularly for the LDC countries. Here, the tragic part is that the loan part is going up and the grant part is going down. And this applies even for the LDCs. For example, in the LDCs, we have 33% as grants. So 1/3, you can tell, and 2/3 is loans. This is not the right thing that we should expect, because the LDCs are the most vulnerable and they must have grants as adaptation finance, because the impacts that we suffer from are imported impacts, not of our own creation. My second observation is that the ODA versus climate finance, that is a huge problem. ODA is going down, but climate finance is going up a little by a few percentage points. So this is something not very welcoming, because now you all know that a significant part of ODA is repackaged as climate finance, but this should not have been. The convention and the Paris Agreement clearly states and agreed that climate finance is an is an obligation on the part of the developed partners based on the principle of common but differentiated responsibility. But we don't find it. And now we are having this COVID era. Um, all the countries of the world, including the developed countries, the developed economies, are very heavily impacted but we can see at short notice about $12 trillion could have been mobilized for supporting their economy, but few $billion are not available. So now there are also look out for alternative options like debt for adaptation swap, debt for climate swaps, and green bonds, and all those. I'm not very optimistic about those, but debt for adaptation swap, I myself had been a part of a study that if it is properly executed, then debt for adaptation swap has got certain good potential. Among the developed country parties, I will say UK stands a little better in terms of, for example, their climate finance record. If you look at the data as the Oxfam lady that they showed, that the loan face value of loan and the grant equivalence of loan for UK almost is the same, just a little different. So this is something positive against, for example, Japanese case or French case. So, but anyway, we cannot depend on international climate finance because now look at Bangladesh case. Already over 80% of our climate investments come from domestic sources. For the last decade, I can cite a ballpark figure that Bangladesh has got about $2 billion as international climate finance support. And only 10% of the 20% of the global adaptation money that comes to the LDC countries, 10% reaches the local communities. So we have to take care of this aspect. Now, in Bangladesh, for example, this year's budget has an allocation of about $3 billion. And IIUD research also showed that about $2 billion, Paul Steele has shown that about $2 billion are invested every year by the households in Bangladesh. So compared to the domestic resources that we invest, international support is kind of paltry, very measly amount. But we need to also be after, because we need to look for more grand part of international support, because Bangladesh is graduating as an LDC country from out of the LDC status. So obviously ODA grant part will go down. So in terms of climate finance, we need to go better after the grant part of climate finance. Now, in terms of effectiveness, for example, literature shows that adaptation money does not flow to the most vulnerable country, but flows based mainly on two criteria. It is the donor interest, one criteria, and the merit of the country in terms of the governance process of that vulnerable country. So until we can have a better governance process of climate finance management, we cannot expect a greater amount of international support. My next point is, if we want to increase adaptiveness, then we must do decentralization of climate finance allocation and management. Because you know, hundreds of evidence-based cases have established the efficacy of locally led adaptation, because the people live in there, they know how to adapt, and if the responsibility is put on them, then they can manage well with a well-structured design process. But our experience in Bangladesh is a little different in the sense I will cite the examples of two ministers, former ministers of environment. Once the minister from Chittagong was there, and most of the projects went to Chittagong, and then came a minister from Borishal, so the southern part of Borishal. So these are, most of these projects are very ill-conceived, ill-constructed. So we are not having any effectiveness. We must have the big bang out of the limited buck that we have, because either as mentioned, domestic resources or international resources are very, very limited. So we need to be very careful about that. And I always, another point I argue, that if we can have real application of the Right to Information Act, then I think we can have better effectiveness, because both the government and the NGOs who work on donor money are supposed to present all their data in the website in a very clear, transparent manner. So both the governments and the NGOs who deal with foreign money also are supposed to provide all this information clearly, very transparent manner, like in a mirror. So this is one way. And finally, my last comment is about, I am a little optimistic about starting the GCF's EDA new guideline. This new guideline is excellent. If it can be implemented, for example, they have the provision of small grants facilities directly to be given to the local communities. So if that happens, then I think international money can flow directly to the local governments and local level management. So with all this, I think today's presentation by our NGO partners, by the distinguished panelists, will have better kind of contribution to this cerebral process of how to manage and better achieve the effectiveness of climate finance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Mizan Khan. So before we move on to the next part, I just wanted to give a brief backdrop. As I mentioned in the beginning, this session is being organized by a set of partners who are part of this the issue-based project on climate finance. Uh, the overarching objective of this project is to essentially enhance the access and utilization as well as governance of climate finance in Bangladesh through a combination of research, capacity building, and policy advocacy. And the project partners work with a wide range of stakeholders, both at the national level and local level, through a range of activities to enhance how climate finance is being dispersed, managed, as well as implemented on the ground. So for in today's session, we'll try to focus on one specific component that the project tries to look into, which is how to ensure that the fund that goes all the way to the local level is actually being effective. What Professor Mizan said, that while there has been a lot of efforts to ensure climate finance is being disbursed, and we have and the need for climate finance is quite clear, but now it is time to also move on from the quantity of climate finance and also need to look into how we can improve the quality of climate finance. What that essentially means is that for climate finance to be effective, it is essential that it adequately responds to the needs of those most vulnerable at the local level, who are often at the brunt of climate change impacts. And for that to happen, there is a critical need to ensure that the needs and priorities at the local level are adequately considered and reflected in national plans, policies, and programming on climate change in Bangladesh. So essentially, this session will try to explore this through a series of presentations and discussions. So with that said, I will now like to invite Mr. Prodip Kumar Roy, who works with the Campaign for Sustainable Rural Livelihoods, who are one of the project partners. They've been working in the southwest coastal region of Bangladesh with the local government and local actors to understand what are some of the major challenges they face, and they will also, Shapoti Kumar will also share some of the efforts they've undertaken on the ground to help enhance how climate finance is being used on the ground. Over to you, Mr. Prodip.
Thank you, Riyadat Bhai, and dear guests and ladies and gentlemen, good morning. And thank ICCCAD for giving me this opportunity to present our work at this seminars. First, I want to introduce my organization, CSRL. CSRL for Campaign for Sustainable Rural Livelihoods. CSRL is a national network of CSOs and NGOs. It has been working with the local community people on the issue of agriculture, climate change, and trade since 2007. Working around the country, we assert the people concerns and convey these concerns to the policymakers and government as well for the necessary policy implications. We organized earlier 3 climate tribunals where the British parliamentarians and the national policymaker and experts of the experts heard the community voice of the climate vulnerabilities at the local levels. And from 2017, we have been implementing a project on climate finance in the coastal region, particularly in the Shamnagar Upazila under Satkhiria districts, Koira Upazila under Khulna districts, and the riverine region, Shodor Upazila of Gaibandha districts. It's supported by the Prakash British Council. This work goal is to strengthen the climate governance in Bangladesh through empowering the people vulnerable to the climate change. For pursue the strengthening of the climate governance as well the proper utilization of the climate finance, which are allocated in the local level. The climate finance are also allocated at the local level. We also formed a local CSO network at Gaibandha Shodor Upazila and Shamnagar and Koira Upazila also. We have supported this network to observe and monitor the local climate vulnerabilities and implemented projects which are impacted to the local people. We also capacitated them to present these vulnerabilities to the local public administration and the policymakers for the solutions. And the local network, Jalbayu Parishad, already identified by the focus group discussion, identified the local adaptation priority at the union level, and they identified the priority issue for adaptation as embankment is the top priority issues for adaptation for the both in coastal and riverine region. Employment and livelihood is the second priority adaptation issues for the riverine region, while while salinity and drinking water stands second for the coastal region. Can you hear me?
Yes, Prodip, I hear you. Please go on.
Okay, thank you. And the displacement and migration and agriculture stand third and fourth priority according to the riverine and coastal region. Now we will see the government priority. If we look at the budget of government, we will see in fiscal year 2015 and 16, climate relief and allocation was 10,925 crore taka. Within the 5 years, the government doubled this allocation. The fiscal year 19 and 20, government allocated 23,748 crore taka for climate relevant activities. We see it is a good sign. And the Department and Public and Engineering is implementing 44 projects around the country, which amounted 32,934 crore taka only for the water supply around the country. It is also the good initiative, but what the impact of this finance which invested at the country, what is impact to the community level? When we work in the community people, we see that government are investing a lot of money, but the communities in coastal region, particularly Shamnagar and Koira Upazila, are suffering from water. They are walking miles after miles for collecting their daily livings, and they are suffering severe water shortage. After Cyclone Amphan, Cyclone Amphan destroyed the weak embankment at the coastal region and flooded the villages. Flood occurred thrice time in the northern region and embankment collapsed Government has doubled the climatic allocation. Already I said that, but the top priority of people, they demand embankment is not built or repaired. So people are asked quick response for government on sustainable embankment, but they are taking more time. As a result, they go to the local LGI representative, chairman, and members for getting quick remedies. The local chairman and members are bounded, they are elected by the people, so they are bounded to respond. So they are with the community people, the chairman and members are making ring embankment at a quick response. Government uh, and this is the picture of this ring embankment preparation, community people participation at the ring embankment activities. Now we see the but I said the government budget, government allocation, and also the local scenarios, and what we see in the policy level. We have some policy document, government allocated climatic fund based on the our BCCSAP document, but the BCCSAP document elaborate only the six themes where they are investing money, but it not reflected the local level scenarios. It is the national scenarios, and national government invested money in the infrastructure or comprehensive disaster management issues, but it not said that Koira or Shamnagar embankment is will be built. So it is a problem. So we see the local priority is embankment, but the national priority is under this sixth theme, and they invested more money in food security, social protection, and health services. It is a national priority, but there is some gaps in the local and national priorities. Uh, at last, so the our local people are demanding embankment management. They're demanding to build a sustainable embankment. If the sustainable embankment is built, then their livelihood will be secured. So they said that immediately build the coastal and the riverine embankment, and they also demanded to involve the LGIs because they go to LGIs directly, but the national government is not reachable to the people. So they said that embankment management must be involved the LGIs persons. And from our work, we see that we see that local vulnerability, and we assesses, and we ask the government to assess the local vulnerability through the LGIs, because LGIs is a very low tier of the government process, governance process of our Bangladesh. So LGI can assess their own vulnerabilities and uh, identify their priority issues for adaptations. And based on this document of LGIs, the national adaptation plan could be formulated. It is the people said. So we argue the other persons and the experts and the policymakers to think about it. This is my presentation, and thank you all to hear me. Thank you to all.
Thank you very much, Prodip. So as we can see from your presentation, uh, while there is a substantial commitment from the national government to ensure the climate finance needs of those at the local level are responded to and addressed, there often is a mismatch between macro level programming and micro level needs. And this is where it's important to ensure that there is robust systems, mechanisms, and structures available at the ground level to ensure transparency and accountability of climate finance that is being used in Bangladesh. And this is where the role of grassroots organizations and civil society organizations that are working on the ground becomes highly crucial. So now I would like to invite Muhammad Zahidul Islam, who works at Coast Trust as the head of social development and MEL, who would share the importance of CSOs on the ground for promoting the transparency and accountability of climate finance. So Zahid bhai, do you want to share your screen? Naki ami korbo আপনার জন্য?
থ্যাংক ইউ রিয়াদ ভাই। আমি একটু চাচ্ছিলাম যদি আমার স্ক্রিন একটু ইনফরমেশন আপডেট করেছি, যদি আমাকে একটু কোহোস্ট করা যায়।
জি Zahid bhai, so I will request please make Zahid bhai the co-host, and then whenever you're ready, please share your screen.
Thank you very much.
So over to you, Zahid bhai. Thank you. রিয়াদ ভাই, আমার স্ক্রিন নিশ্চয়ই দেখা যাচ্ছে? জি জাহিদ ভাই, আপনি শুরু করতে পারেন। থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ।
Okay, thank you everyone. Firstly, I would like to give thanks to the honorable participants and panelists. I would like to share that the field level experience of Coast Trust for this project. Firstly, our topic for the day is promote transparency and accountability of climate finance, climate finance, the role of CSOs. Okay. Now, as we can see that about the climate finance project, the duration of our project is from 1st January 2017 to 12 October 2021, and as we are working in the coastal areas, so our selected objectives in terms of CFTM projects is enhance transparency and accountability in climate finance project implementation, and build CSO communities' capacities on effective participation in advocacy, campaign, and lobby at the local and national level. Now, I would like to elaborate that why we have chosen these objectives. First, transparency and accountability in our country are a little bit vulnerable due to political context and lack of governance but in recent years we have been observing that the government of Bangladesh gave more emphasis on climate finance strategies. We have seen that 25 ministries have been are involved in the climate budgeting process, and as Prodip shows in one of his slides that around 8% of the total national budget is allocating to climate finance, which is almost 1% of the total GDP. Almost 1% of the total GDP of our country. So we think, as Coast Trust think that total monitoring is needed. Monitoring is needed to ensure the transparency and accountability of this project. So we needed a stake from the local level. So we have in support by Prakash British Council, we started this project, climate finance project, and our project is mainly focused on you will see in our next slides that our project is mainly focused on the CSO groups, so at the local level, and the second objective that I have mentioned, that about the CSO community's capacity on effective participation, that we all know that government has a separate division, a dedicated division that is called IMED, but their project monitor at the local level, or as we're working in the coastal belt or in the remotest areas of our country, mostly you can see our working area in the map. So in the map, so in that particular areas, IMEDs supervision or field verification, as their working procedures, field verification are very much weak. So monitoring is I have mentioned already, that monitoring is the foremost issue for the effective implementation of climate finance projects. So that's why we have selected the CSOs. That's the main reason actually. We have selected the CSOs. They have adequate local knowledge, they have experience, and they are representative of their community people, and they are the familiar face of the community. They come from the community. So they are, if we are capacitated them, they can be a social watchdog during the implementation of this climate finance project, which is ultimately help to a better implementation of the project, of the ongoing development project, which is financed by the climate finance. So, okay, here in these slides, I would like to mention our activities, our major activities. As I have said, that our project is mainly focused on the CSO groups. We have 15 CSO groups in the 3 of our working district, Bhola, Cox's Bazar, and Pituakali, and 12 upajilas, most vulnerable upajilas among the districts. Among the CSO groups, we have in total 203 members, and among the 203 members, we have 76 female members. More specifically, among the 76 now members, female members, we have 43 female youth members. Now, in terms of capacity development, we've provided them several trainings, including the government officials. Now you can ask that why the government officials in this process? Because we think that they have an important role in the primary selection of the climate finance project at the local level. So, and as the CSOs are working directly with the government officials at local level, so we need them actually. So we added them in our process by participating in trainings and meetings and other activities. And then climate finance projects tracking and their implementation monitoring. One of our major activities, it's also called as social audits. Well, already we have done 114 social audits from January 2017 to till date, and we are looking to organize even more. And then the dialogue and lobby and advocacy with the local government, we have done it 63 meetings. Now, actually dialogue and lobby, you all know about the issue. The social audits, after conducting the social audits by the CSOs, by our project colleagues, and in presence of the departments, the local level relevant local government officials, we collected some observations on the ongoing development scheme. Then we organize a dialogue with the implemented office, government office. It can be LGD, it can be PIO, it can be WDB, it can be the Ministry of the Department of Environment also. So these are the process that after conducting social audit, we are sharing the observation with the local government departments through the dialogue or lobby, and then the local and national level dialogue to build consensus as raise collective voice. Actually, it is we put those voices from the local levels, the CSU's voices at the national level. We participated them in different national level seminars. They have talked. They talked their experiences. They share their challenges at these seminars. Through this, they are able to raise their voice. They are confident to raise their voice now. So next slide. Okay. Achievements. Uh, Actually, ensuring accountability and transparency is very challenging regarding country context, but we try to see and measures our achievements from two different lenses. One is accountability, and the second one is transparency. Now, in terms of accountability, uh, okay, sorry, I missed one thing. That is our CSO's focus actually our focusing issues, which types of schemes actually we are focusing. Our CSOs are focused. These are the coastal protection issues actually. The three schemes actually three major schemes we are visiting. That is embankment construction, repair and maintenance, and cyclone shelter, and then the management of climate displaced people, like as the cluster village, So these basically these three types of development scheme our CSO members are visiting in our country, in our project working areas. So in terms of accountability, we say that that quality of implementation is enhanced, and then the proper utilization of allocated funds enhanced due to increasing social monitoring by the CSO groups, lobby, and continuous field visit by the government officials. As I mentioned earlier, that uh, how the quality of implementation, because of the rigorous visit by by our CSO members and their lobby with the government officials, they are they somehow influence the government officials to visit the schemes with them. So and try to take commitment from the government officials, and then they do the follow-up also. So in this following the procedures, we are mentioning that the quality and the proper utilization of allocated funds are enhanced. And okay, in terms of transparency, as you see, as it is written here, regarding the present context, access to information hasn't been ensured at all level. Despite this, our CSOs are working to get access somehow, through their own capacity and lobby with local government officials. And the second one is by avoiding some sensitive information and observation regarding political influence bureaucracy. We have able to establish our relationship and strengthen our communication with authorities, local government departments, and political leaders. Actually, in the second part, I would like wanted to say that actually our CSO groups are working there. They have their challenges. They are facing it. They are facing it. They know in course of time they are adjusted with the situation. Actually, they know which observation they have to pass out, which observation they have to they have to say. So in this way, they are able to establish their relationship. They are continuing their relationship with the local government with the local government officials, and and actually, as I mentioned earlier, we have chosen the distinguished people, the renowned person of the community as our CSO members. They are the professor, they are the school teachers, they are the NGO representative, or they are the local political leaders. So in this way, they are actually they're in the community for a long time. They're in the community from the so they have a continuous relation with the departments. So in this way, actually, uh, we are ensuring the transparency, where we are trying to ensure strengthen our relationship with the local government officials and the other representatives, local representatives. So that's the end. Thank you all. Is there any question, please write in the chat box. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Zahid Bhai. There are a
uh,
number of questions. Ji, Zahid Bhai,
okay, just one more thing actually.
please.
In my slides, I'm not talking about the challenges because one of our CSO representative is here. He will share his experience on this issue. So we will hear the challenges and experiences of our CSOs directly from his mouth. Thank you, Riadat Bhai.
Thank you, Zahid Bhai. We will give him the floor in a second, and when I'm sure we'll get to hear from him directly. Before we do that, we also have Mr. S.M. Ataul Haq Dolon, who's the chairman of Shamnagar Upazila Parishad. So, since we talked about what the project has been doing on the ground, both with engaging local actors and local CSOs, we think it's also important to hear from some of these local actors directly and also allow them a chance to share their experiences. So I would like to now invite Mr. S.M. Ataul Haq Dolon to please come in and to share some of his experiences and the challenges that him as a local government representative faces in the management and delivery of climate change projects on the ground. Ataul Haq Dolon, ভাইয়া, স্যার আপনি কি আছেন?
Riadat Bhaiya, he will join after 11 a.m. Okay.
আচ্ছা, তাহলে in that case, we can wait, and then instead, then what Mr. Zahid said, we also have a representative from the CSO group, Mr. Niamatullah. So he's a CSO representative from Bhola Shodar Upazila, which is a coastal district in Bangladesh. নিয়ামত ভাই, আপনি কি শুনতে পাচ্ছেন?
নিয়ামত ভাই আপনাকে একটু আনমিউট করতে, আচ্ছা আমরা আনমিউট করে দিচ্ছি।
জি, আমি আনমিউট করেছি।
জি, নিয়ামত ভাই, থ্যাংক ইউ।
বুঝতে পারছি।
ফর আপনার, সো আপনি শুরু করতে পারেন। ধন্যবাদ।
জি, আমি বাংলাতেই বলবো।
জি, অবশ্যই, কোনো সমস্যা নেই।
সবাইকে অনেক অনেক শুভেচ্ছা। আমি জেলা জলবায়ু ফোরামের সদস্য। আমি প্রথমে আমরা যে কাজগুলো করে থাকি, যে সেই বিষয়টা আমাদের এখানে ভোলা জেলায় জলবায়ু ফোরাম এবং উপজেলা জলবায়ু ফোরাম আছে। এখানে আপনার নারী পুরুষ এবং যুবকদের নিয়ে এই জলবায়ু ফোরাম গঠিত। আমরা সাধারণত যে ভোলার যে বিষয়গুলো নিয়ে একটু আলোচনা করতে চাই, সেটা হচ্ছে যে ভোলা হচ্ছে একটা বিচ্ছিন্ন এরিয়া। এখানের আপনার পূর্বে, ভোলার পূর্বে হচ্ছে মেঘনা নদী, দক্ষিণে হচ্ছে বঙ্গোপসাগর এবং উত্তরে হচ্ছে ইলিশা নদী, এবং পূর্বে হচ্ছে, পশ্চিমে হচ্ছে আপনার তেঁতুলিয়া নদী। অর্থাৎ চারপাশেই আমাদের অসংখ্য নদী আছে। বড় নদীগুলি হলো 5টা এবং প্রায় 1300 কিলোমিটারের মতো খাল আছে। তো আমাদের যে সমস্যাগুলো সেটা হচ্ছে যে এই ভোলার, সেটা হচ্ছে যে ভাঙন। প্রধান সমস্যা হচ্ছে ভাঙন। এই ভাঙনের ফলে এবং ইদানিং যে সমস্যাটা দেখা দিয়েছে সেটা হচ্ছে উচ্চ জোয়ার। চলতি বছরে আপনার উচ্চ জোয়ারের যেই এটা ছিল প্রায় 5 মিটার, মানে সাধারণ লেভেল থেকে 5 মিটার। তো এই উচ্চ জোয়ারের কারণে আপনার অনেক বাঁধ ভেঙে গেছে। হ্যালো, অনেক বাঁধ ভেঙে গেছে এবং অনেক বাঁধ উপচে পানি পড়েছে। তো এই ক্ষেত্রে যেটা আমাদের সমস্যা দেখা দিচ্ছে যে কৃষি এবং গবাদি পশু, মৎস্য খামার এবং সর্বোপরি ইলিশের ক্ষতিটা হচ্ছে। ইলিশের ক্ষতিটা হচ্ছে এভাবে যে নদীতে ভাঙনের কারণে সিলটেশনটা বেশি পড়তেছে। তো আপনার এই জলবায়ু ফোরাম আমরা যে কাজটা করে থাকি, এই যে এখানকার যেই প্রতিষ্ঠানগুলো আপনার যেই সব প্রজেক্টগুলি হাতে নিয়েছে, যেই এলাকাগুলো সাধারণত ক্ষতিগ্রস্ত হচ্ছে, আমরা ওই সংশ্লিষ্ট যে ডিপার্টমেন্ট আছে, যে ডিপার্টমেন্টের সঙ্গে কথা বলি। কথা বলার পরে আপনার তাদের একজন কর্মকর্তাকে নিয়ে আমরা স্থানে যাই এবং সমস্যাগুলি আমরা আইডেন্টিফাই করি। সম্প্রতি আমরা ভোলার বুরহানুদ্দিন উপজেলার একটা এলাকায়, এটা হচ্ছে আপনার বেতুয়া খালের, ওইখানকার এক লোক আপনার এই বেতুয়া খালটাকে ভরাট করে দুই পাশে বাঁধ দিয়ে আপনার মাছ চাষ করছিল। পরবর্তীতে আপনার আমফানের সময় ওই বাঁধটা এই বাঁধ দেওয়ার কারণে ওই এলাকায় জলাবদ্ধতা সৃষ্টি হয় এবং ওইখানকার যে মৎস্য সম্পদ এবং কৃষিক্ষেত সবকিছু প্লাবিত হয়ে যায়। প্লাবিত হয়ে যাওয়ার ফলে পরে যেখানকার প্রায় কয়েকশো ২-৩টা ইউনিয়নের কয়েক হাজার লোক এটার ক্ষতিগ্রস্তের শিকার হয়। পরবর্তীতে আমরা যখন এটাকে খোঁজ নিয়ে জানতে পারি তখন আমরা পানি উন্নয়ন বোর্ড এবং কৃষি অফিস সবার সঙ্গে প্রাথমিক আলোচনা করি। আলোচনার পরে তাদেরকে সঙ্গে নিয়ে ঘটনাস্থলটা আমরা দেখতে যাই। ওইখানে বিষয়টা হচ্ছে যে এই যে খালটা, এই খালটা ইজারা দিছিল হচ্ছে আপনার ইউনো কিন্তু এখানে ঘটনাস্থলে যায় নাই। পরবর্তীতে যখন উনি এটা বুঝতে পারলেন এবং এই প্রতিষ্ঠানগুলো আমরা এটা নিয়ে তখন একটা গোল টেবিল বৈঠক করলাম এবং এখানকার সমস্যাগুলি তুলে ধরলাম। কৃষি সেক্টর তাদের সমস্যা তুলে ধরলেন, পানি উন্নয়ন বোর্ড তাদের নদী ভাঙনের এই সমস্যাগুলি তুলে ধরলেন। ফলে ওইখানে যে এটার যে ইম্প্যাক্টটা আপনারা পরবর্তীতে এটাকে সমাধানের জন্য প্রত্যেকটি প্রতিষ্ঠানে এগিয়ে আসছে। আমাদের কাজের পদ্ধতিগুলো হচ্ছে এরকম। এর আগেও আমরা ইয়াতে বিভিন্ন এলাকায় আমরা এইভাবে কাজ করেছি। তো আমাদের এখানকার যেই সমস্যাগুলো আমাদেরকে সমাধানের জন্য এই জলবায়ু যে ফোরাম যে কমিটিগুলো আছে এরা মোটামুটি ভালোই মানে ভূমিকা পালন করে, বিশেষ করে প্রেসার গ্রুপ হিসেবে কাজ করে। আমাদের এই যে এখানকার যে ভোলার যে এরিয়াগুলো, তো এখানে আমার মনে হয় যে এখন এখন আমাদের এখানে 3টা উপজেলায় কাজ হচ্ছে, 4টা উপজেলায়, বুরহানুদ্দিন, তজিমুদ্দিন, চরপেশন এবং ভোলা সদর। তো আমার মনে হয় যে এটা সমস্ত উপজেলাতে কাজ করা উচিত এবং প্রতিটি ইউনিয়নেই আমাদের এখানে কমিটি গঠন করা এবং প্রতিটি উপজেলায় কমিটি গঠন করা এবং এখানকার যে আমরা যে জলবায়ু যে নেতিবাচক দিক, এটা কিন্তু অলরেডি আমরা মানে ভুক্তভোগী, মানে আমাদের এখানে ইমপ্যাক্টটা কিন্তু পড়া শুরু হয়েছে। যে আমরা যে দীর্ঘদিন ধরে বিজ্ঞানীদের মুখে শুনেছিলাম যে জলবায়ু ও নেতিবাচক দিক প্রভাব, জলবায়ুর যে নেতিবাচক প্রভাবে ভোলা জেলা সহ উপকূলীয় জেলাগুলি ক্ষতিগ্রস্ত হবে, সেটা কিন্তু অলরেডি আমরা ভুক্তভোগী হচ্ছি আর কি। যেমন এই বছর যে জোয়ারের উচ্চতা ছিল সেটা কিন্তু অন্যান্য বছর দেখা যায় বছরে একবার কোনো বছর হয় না, কিন্তু এই বছর আপনার টানা কয়েকবার, প্রথমে আমপান, তার আগে বুলবুলি, তারপরে এই ঘূর্ণিঝড়গুলি ইফেক্ট করছে, তারপরে টানা জোয়ারে ব্যাপক ফসলের ক্ষতি। কৃষকের একজন রবি শীত মৌসুমে সাধারণত কৃষি ফসলের তেমন একটা ক্ষতি হয়নি, কিন্তু গত 2020 সালে করোনার পূর্বক্ষণে আমাদের কৃষকরা 4-5 বার বীজ লাগাইছে, 4-5 বার গাছ লাগাইছে, তারপরেও অনেকে টিকাইতে পারছে, টিকাইতে পারে নাই। তারপরে আসলো হচ্ছে আমফান, তারপরে আসলো হচ্ছে উচ্চ জোয়ার। এই উচ্চ জোয়ারের ফলে আপনার মানুষের যে কৃষি ক্ষেত্রে যে ব্যাপক ক্ষতি হয়েছে, তারপরে আপনার ক্ষতি হয়েছে হচ্ছে গবাদি পশুর যে সমস্যাটা গুলো ছিল সেটা হচ্ছে যে চর ডুবে গেছে, চলে গবাদি পশুর খাবার সংকট দেখা দিচ্ছে। তারপরে আপনার মৎস্য খামার গুলো বারবার মাছ ছাড়া সত্ত্বেও প্রায় এখানে 70,000-এর মতো পুকুর আছে, আপনার প্রায় 50টার মতো আপনার আছে, এই মানে ব্যক্তিগত উদ্যোগে খামার 50টার উপরে আছে। তো সেইগুলো আপনার এই মাছ ডুবে ভেসে গেছে। আমাদের এখানে যে আপনি জানেন যে সারা বাংলাদেশে যে পরিমাণ ইলিশ উৎপাদন হয় তার 2/3 ভোলাতে উৎপাদন হয়। তো ইলিশে এই নদী ভাঙনের কারণে ইলিশের যে ভূমিকাটা মানে ক্ষতিকর প্রভাবটা পড়তেছে, যে নদী ভাঙার কারণে আপনার মেঘনা এবং তেঁতুলিয়া নদীতে ফিল্ট্রেশন পড়তেছে, পলি পড়ে ডুবোচর হচ্ছে। তার ফলে আপনার যখন ব্রিডিং এর সময় হয়, মাছ যখন ডিম পাড়তে আসে, ডিম পাড়ার সময় হয় তখন কিন্তু সাগর থেকে মাছ উপরে উঠে আসার কথা, কিন্তু পুরো বর্ষা মৌসুমে সাগরে ইলিশ মাছ পাওয়া গেছে, কিন্তু আপনার আম, নদীতে পাওয়া যায়নি। এটার কারণ জেলেরা বলতেছে এবং বিশেষজ্ঞরাও বলতেছে যে এটা হচ্ছে ডুবোচরের কারণ, কারণ ডুবোচর গুলোতে এত পরিমাণ বাধা প্রাপ্ত হয়। তো এখন এই ডুবোচরটা পড়তেছে মূলত নদী ভাঙনের কারণে এবং উত্তরীয় যে বন্যা
নেয়ামত ভাই,
উত্তরাঞ্চলে। হ্যাঁ
সরি আপনাকে আপনি যদি আর 1 মিনিটের মধ্যে সামারাইজ করতে পারেন খুব ভালো
হ্যাঁ
হতো আর কি সময়।
আচ্ছা, সেটা হচ্ছে যে আমাদের এই যে ব্যাপক ক্ষতি, আমরা যে ক্ষতির সম্মুখীন হচ্ছি, আমি মনে করি যে আমাদের এই জলবায়ু ফোরাম এবং নীতি নির্ধারকগণ ভোলা নিয়ে আলাদাভাবে চিন্তা করতে হবে এবং এখানের যে সমস্যাগুলো আছে এই সমস্যাগুলো সমাধানে অগ্রণী ভূমিকা পালন করতে হবে। ধন্যবাদ।
Thank you, Neamat bhai. খুব ভালো লাগলো জানতে পেরে. So for the other participants, what Mr. Neamatullah just basically shared was spoke about what are some of the pressing climatic hazards and issues that are being faced by the residents of Bhola Upazila, which is a coastal district in Bangladesh, and which is this mainly includes riverbank erosion, and often the district is subjected to tidal surges, and a lot of it is sources from the state of embankment management in the district. And so to address that, he also talked about the CSO Forum, which is a consortium of on the grassroots organizations and representatives who actively work in Bhola Upazila to engage with the local government and to also advocate for greater action on this issue. We will be posting a detailed translation on the chat box, which should already be there, so you can read from there to better understand what his intervention was. Uh, Now, I hope we do have Mr. SM Ataul Hogdun who has joined us. So I would now like to request Mr. Ataul, who's the chairman of Shamnagar Upazila Parishad, to also share some of his experiences and insights. জি আতাউল ভাই, আপনি কি আছেন? আতাউল সাহেব?
হ্যাঁ ভাই আছেন, এই স্টেজে আছেন, আমার ফোন ভাইয়ের কাছে লাইনে আছেন।
জি, আপনি আপনি আপনার কথা শুরু করতে পারেন। যদি আপনি 3-4 মিনিটে যদি আপনি একটু আপনার বক্তব্যটা করতে পারতেন খুব ভালো। জি, ধন্যবাদ।
আচ্ছা, আমি 3-4 মিনিট পরে দিলে আমি কথা বলছি ওনার সাথে, উনি ওই স্টেজে তো উদ্বোধন
আচ্ছা,
হচ্ছে।
উনি ব্যস্ত এখন, তাহলে আর উনি আর কিছুক্ষণ পরে করবে এটা বলছেন?
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ,
আচ্ছা, সমস্যা নেই, তাহলে ঠিক আছে।
5 মিনিট, ঠিক আছে।
রিয়াদত ভাইয়া, we cannot hear you. আপনি মনে হয় মিউটে আছেন।
জি, oh, sorry about that. Uh, oh, so unfortunately, I guess we cannot hear from the local government representative now, but maybe we can accommodate him later. So I believe we can just now move on to the next part of today's session, which will essentially be a guided discussion among a notable panel of experts and policymakers who will share from their position on based on what we heard today about what the challenges faced at the local level are and what are some of the actions that are being taken, and how various national level programs and plans are taking these issues into consideration in their planning and implementation. So maybe we can begin with Mr. Ranjit Kumar Chakraborty. Mr. Ranjit Kumar Chakraborty is a noted public financial management expert in the country, and he's currently working as a project director of the IBFCR project at UNDP. As a lot of you might know, in 2014, the government of Bangladesh adopted the climate fiscal framework, which the objective of which was to embed climate action within the public financial management systems and fiscal processes within the country. I believe it is currently in the process of being updated, and I would like to request Mr. Ranjit Chakraborty to share from his position a bit about the climate fiscal framework and how it considers the needs of local actors and local governments. Over to you, Ranjit, sir.
Okay, thank you, Riyadat. Are you Riyadat?
Ji, Ranjit, sir. ठीक है,
Okay, thank you
जी.
very much.
Ranjit, sir,
Uh,
if you can keep it to
can you hear me?
absolutely. Sir, I'm going to request you to, if you can keep our intervention to 5 to 6 minutes, because we're...
Okay, 5 to 6 minutes.
Ji, thank you. That would be great.
Okay, thank you for first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Mizan for setting the scene, and also I heard as many as 3 presentations so far. So I wish I could hear more. Then I could really, shape my discussion today. But looking at the title of this meeting today, rather seminar today, is it's a long title, linking local level needs to national plan and priorities for enhancing climate finance effectiveness in Bangladesh. Yes, indeed, let me start with effectiveness, climate finance effectiveness, and this is very important. And I'll be talking about linking part at a later stage, but effectiveness part is very important. Through the intervention of the project that has been that is being implemented by the Ministry of Finance Division, we call it Inclusive Budgeting and Financing for Climate Resilience. We are basically dealing with the entire climate finance governance in the country, which definitely includes what we are doing at the national level and also the local level. If you remember, the review, a very comprehensive review took place back in 2012. It is called CPEIR, Climate Public Finance, Climate Public Expenditure and Institutional Review. And this review was undertaken to understand the financial management arrangements in the country, and also the climate relevant institutional framework that deals with climate finance or climate change rather. Now, in that particular review, there were 2 indications, rather recommendations. One was climate fiscal framework. I'll be actually concentrating on that, what is happening at the national level and also at the local level. In that report, there were 2 recommendations. One was developing a climate fiscal framework at the national level, and also there is another indication about developing local climate financing framework. So we have already done local national level climate fiscal framework, which was adopted in 2014, and now this has been updated by inclusion of several other aspects. One is the recent public finance management reforms and private sector engagement, and also the insurance sector of the country through the climate inclusive insurance policy, and also climate bond. So we have broadened the horizon or broadened the remit of this climate fiscal framework at the national level. But at the same time, we did not lose sight of the needs of the local level. In particular, we are working at the Union Parishad level, and there we are also developing a climate financing framework. We call it not local climate fiscal framework, we call it local climate financing framework. And the whole purpose of this framework is to put in place a system so that climate dimension is embedded in the local planning, local level planning, Union Parishad level planning, and also budgeting. So that exercise is still going on, and hopefully by the end of this year, we'll be in a position to put in place a comprehensive framework which will, for the local level, which will enable the Union Parishads to include climate dimension in their planning and budgeting process. So, and also at the same time, in parallel, since we are talking about effectiveness, we are also trying to introduce social audit by involving the local level NGOs, local level elites, or rather social workers and local level actors. And the purpose of this intervention is to enable or is to empower the local level right holders so that they can uh, they can uh, uh, they can actually look for themselves what is happening at the ground level, what the kind of projects that are being implemented by the Union Parishad, whether they are delivering the delivering the intended outputs that are supposed to be delivered by them, by the projects. So that kind of uh, initiative is still going on. And we have already piloted one social audit, two social audits in two Union Parishads. And also we have developed one social audit training manual for the local level auditors, social auditors. Any interruption? I think one name has popped up. Should I continue?
Please, sir, please.
Okay, thank you very much. So,
শ্যামনগর উপজেলা চেয়ারম্যান
I think
Sorry, Ranjit sir, I'm addressing that on the side. You continue
please.
your intervention, please. Sorry about that.
শ্যামনগর উপজেলা চেয়ারম্যান
জি আতাউল ভাই, আপনি একটু পরে আসেন, আমরা এখন কথা বলছি, আপনাকে আমি ডাকবো যখন সময় হবে। জি।
Okay, should I continue now?
জি sir, I'm really sorry about
Okay, how many more minutes?
that. You can take one or 2 minutes, please.
1 or 2 minutes. Okay, I'll definitely sum up more within 1 or 2 minutes. So now, if you look at the title of this topic, there is a gap between national level planning and also local level planning. And in Bangladesh, our budget setting exercise is not as such as a bottom-up one. It's kind of top-down one. When we formulate our budget, we consult we undertake, pre-budget consultation, and also we involve the, farmers in particular upazila. But that doesn't mean that we are addressing the local level needs in a very comprehensive way. So there is a gap there. And in terms of climate finance, in Bangladesh, climate finance as such, we are not preparing a climate budget as such. What we do, we prepare a climate budget report. And by delivering this report, what we try to do, we try to work out the climate relevant allocation subsumed in the budget allocation of particular ministry. And so far we have covered 25 ministries. And in the last report, we showed that the budget allocation for these 25 ministries, out of this budget, their budget allocation, the climate relevant allocation is 7.52%. It is around 0.7% of GDP. So this is what we are doing at the national level. But at the local level, we need to do more. And at the local level, in order to ensure transparency and accountability, and one of the presenters also, I'm very happy that this is going on. I was not aware of it. So through this presentation, I learned, and that also is also a kind of eye opener for me that social audit is going on, and 114 social audits have been, carried out in their jurisdiction. So this is an encouraging sign. And if at the NGO level or CSO level this is carried out, then we are also thinking how we can embed social audit or include social audit in the government audit protocol at some point. And we'll be developing our advocacy strategy so that the Office of the Auditor General accept the proposal and include this social audit protocol in their entire audit operations. So this is what is going on at the climate finance governance level, and at least at the national level, what is going on. I have just tried to describe this one, and also at the local level, what we are going to do and what will be happening in the next couple of years. So that kind of indication I wanted to present. So I think I should stop here.
Thank you so much, Ranjit sir. Maybe near the end, if there are specific questions, you can come in with your thoughts as
Yes,
well. Yeah.
please.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we heard from Ranjit sir that the national government has been allocating certain amount across various ministries for climate relevant expenditures, which shows significant commitment. But in addition, we all know that we also have the Bangladesh Climate Change Trust Fund, which was a flagship fund initiated by the government about a decade ago to implement the Bangladesh Climate Change Strategy and Action Plan. And over the decade, the fund has implemented various projects across different sectors and thematic areas, and all with the view to build resilience of local communities. So, it is my pleasure to now invite Miss Shakila Yasmin, who is the Assistant Director of Planning at the Bangladesh Climate Change Trust. And Shakila, Appa, we would like to hear from you that what sort of operational procedures and modalities does the Bangladesh Climate Change Trust have in place to ensure that the funds that are being disbursed by the fund is being effective in responding to the needs of communities at the local level. So over to you, Shakilapa.
Thank you, Riadat, for giving me the opportunity. But first of all, my apology that I can't attend in the session, in the morning session, as I was in another meeting in Chittagong. So my apology to all of you. So as I am requested to say something about the trust fund modalities for fund operation and its monitoring mechanism, I have to focus 2 or 3 key points on that issue because as Ranjit sir already mentioned the national level approach and the national level initiatives in the field level for the best initiatives for locally led adaptation. So first of all, I would like to mention that Climate Change Trust Fund was established in 2009. You all know that, and Bangladesh Climate Change Trust is mainly responsible to operationalize the fund at the field level. So far, during last 11 years from Trust Fund, we have taken more than 700 projects, and already 425 projects have been completed at the field level. But we are trying to focus as our priority is to funding in adaptation approach. But last 2 or 3 years, we are also focusing in mitigation approach regarding the local government divisions and their line agencies. So, but as I'm basically we are focused on the financing issue that our funding modality is based on the adaptation priorities. And if I go in a very short point that how the fund is mobilized at the local levels or channelized in the field level, that from the field level, different types of projects have been submitted to Climate Change Trust, and then after we receiving the projects, we will place it to the technical committee, which is headed by the Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. So there are 13 members in the technical committee. They reviewed the proposal very technically as well. And if they thought that the proposal is viable or very much relevant to the local level, to addressing the climate change issues, they recommend it to the trustee board for final approval. So this is the funding procedure of Time Climate Change Trust Fund, or how the proposal will come to the channel and how it will be funded. But if I go to mention about how the beneficiary will be benefited from the fund, truly speaking that we don't address all the local people in our funded projects properly, but we are trying to connect them now in different types of approaches. First of all, I would like to mention that now we are working on to develop a guideline for project selection guideline of Climate Change Trust Fund, which is developed by Dr. Ainun Nishat sir. So in that guideline, we are proposed that so the local level, local communication or local level needs should be come forward in the proposal. And the without the local level consultation, if any proposal submitted to us, we don't consider it as well. So the guideline is just in on development. We don't finalize it yet, but we thought that in very short we will be launching it officially. So this is one of the initiative we must mention that how we can channelize the fund in the local level. It will be work on, I think so. And secondly, I would like to mention in the monitoring approach, as we have funded the projects, we are very much responsible to monitor the projects as a field level, how the fund will be mobilized. As there are 3 tier in the monitoring aspects, both the implementing agency, administrative ministry, and from us on behalf of BCCT. But now we are trying to involve the local people, CSOs, basically the civil society organization to monitor the people. Basically, during last 1 year, we know that in this pandemic, we don't go to the field level, we don't monitor the projects. So we just take this initiative to monitor the projects in online basis. And I must mention here that we are going to initiative another approach incorporating with ICCCAD and BCS, Bangladesh Center for Advanced Studies. We have already meeting with them. Dr. Atiq sir is here. So we are talking about to monitor the projects in online basis for to take the opinion from the local level people, their opinion for the maintenance of the projects, of the supervision of the projects, and we should also consider this report in our official purpose. So if the project is on board, I think the beneficiary will be come forward with the project's results as well, and we will be, our transparency and accountability will also be enhanced in this process. So I think these two initiatives will onboard very soon, and Climate Change Trust will effectively monitor the projects with the existing system. With this new approach, they will monitor the projects very much properly or rightly. So in a very short, this is my point. So Riyadh, I should like to stop here if there are any query or question.
Shakila, thank you so much. Thank you so much for talking a bit about the trust fund. And we can clearly see that the trust fund is committed to uh, update or enhance their existing systems to ensure that the funding processes are more effective in actually building, supporting adaptation measures and building resilience of vulnerable communities. So maybe now I'll just go ahead and check if the local government representative is available. Ataul bhai, আপনি কি যদি থাকেন তাহলে
জুয়েল তুমি একটু দোলন ভাইকে একটু অন করে দাও, উনি যদি না পারেন।
হ্যাঁ আপু, আমি ওনাকে দিচ্ছি।
স্টেজে ঘর তুলে দিচ্ছেন, ঘরের দলিল তুলে দিচ্ছেন, এখনো 2-3 মিনিট সময় লাগবে, আমার সিগন্যাল দিচ্ছে।
তাহলে আমি কিন্তু দুঃখিত, আজকে আসলে আমি চেষ্টা করবো পরে কখনো করতে, এবার আমরা ডিসকাশন আগে, ঠিক আছে?
ভাই হ্যালো,
কমিশনার আছে, আমি একটু আসি এখানে। জুয়েল তুমি একটু প্লিজ দোলন ভাইকে একটু মিউট করো। হ্যাঁ, প্রদীপ চাচ্ছেন একটু বলবেন?
না, বলতে চাচ্ছিলাম এটাই।
জি, আচ্ছা, আমরা আসলে পারছি না মনে হয় নিতে, বিকজ আমাদের এই সেশনটা আসলে শার্প শেষ করে দিতে হবে, তো এই জন্য। জি, রিয়াদ ভাই, ইউ ক্যান কন্টিনিউ। আপনার মাইক্রোফোনটা একটু আস্তে আসছিল। হ্যাঁ, আমরা শুনতে পাচ্ছি।
Thank you so much. We will proceed, and sorry about
Riyadh bhai, sorry, please check your microphone. Your sound is low.
Hello, is it better now?
No. Voice is clear, but sound is low.
Okay, I'm on it. Is it better now?
Yes, quite better.
Well, is it good now?
I think so.
You can go on. Yes.
Okay. Sorry about the minute disruption in between. So we just heard from Ms. Shakila, Yasmin, as well as Mr. Ranjit Kumar Chakraborty on what are some of the national financing approaches that are being employed to address climate change needs in Bangladesh. But at the same time, we do have a global angle, which Professor Mizan in his initial remarks alluded to. So I would now like to welcome Mr. Fazle Rabbi Sadeque Ahmed, who's the director of Palli Sahayak Foundation, PKSF. And as a lot of you might know, PKSF has been a major figure in Bangladesh in paving the way for community-driven adaptation in Bangladesh. And at the same time, PKSF have also been assigned the role of the direct access entity under the Green Climate Fund. And the Green Climate Fund has recently initiated something called the Enhancing Direct Access Program, which ensures simplified access for developing countries to implement climate change projects. And it bears a lot of promise. So I would now like to request if Fazle Rabbi sir, if you could come in and share how you think this new EDA pilot program will be able to better facilitate local action and local needs for climate change in Bangladesh. So over to you, Fazle Rabbi sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Riyadhat, to invite me and to say something specific on enhanced direct access window under Green Climate Fund. In the meantime, actually, we know something from the Professor Mizan Khan on international climate finance modalities. In fact, financing is always a critical issue. My experience is actually nobody, no country not interested to finance. That is the basic rule. Second, sometimes they are providing financing, but with some modalities, with some politics behind it as well. Regarding enhanced direct access, as you know, in Green Climate Fund for the true replenishment process, around $18 billion placed for that fund. Out of that, actually, as there is the rule that GCF will try to allocate 50-50 from adaptation and for mitigation. But up to now, it is not like that. Maximum money, I think it's up to 30% adaptation and rest of the money for mitigation. As you know that money for adaptation, in maximum cases, it is grant. And as Professor Mizan and the initial comments on this seminar that he said that the allocation of loan is gradually increasing trend. So you see that adaptation money and grant financing is actually decreasing trend. But so far, regarding enhanced direct access, I think it is the decision of the board B10 and already B20, board 26 already. That means this decision is long before. I think it is in the year 2017 or 16 that it is decided that there is a separate window. It is only for direct access. That means for national entities, and it should be enhanced. Enhanced means it should be quicker than the as usual normal projects. I can share some of my experience. Actually, I submitted from PKSF side a project on this window in 2018. And still it is under secretariat level to process. Then it will go to senior management, then independent technical advisory panel, and then to the board. And my experience is that although the board decision, 10 pilot projects should be under this window and $20 million allocated separately. That's all, everything sounds very good. But practically, I submitted the project on 2018 and it is still under secretariat review. I'm not see anything, it is enhanced. I'm not seeing anything, it is different from the normal project. The name says it is enhanced, the name says it direct access. Yes, it is. The international entities cannot apply through this window. That is true. But it is not enhanced practically. And the process is not quicker. As usual, as it is. But maybe it is a separate window so that international entity, as you know, the maximum around 80 to 90% money goes to the international entity. Maybe board or secretariat wants to channel some of the funds to the national entities. That is fine. But practically, I don't see anything. But maybe in future it will be effective. Let's see what is going to happen in future. But overall, in Green Climate Fund, if we look on that you know that 2020, it's supposed to channel $100 billion per year for climate finance. As Professor Mizan Khan said, if we see the calculation of climate finance, you get different picture. If you see OECD, it is one picture. If you see Oxfam calculation, you will get another picture. If you see the Standing Committee on Finance under UNFCCC, that is another. And if you see the papers on green G70 and 77 and China group, that is another picture. That means as there is no definition on climate finance, we don't know how much is coming for actually climate finance issue. So defining climate finance is a major issue. And I think another, it should be calculated under the leadership of UNFCCC. It is not should be on OECD. It should not be other Oxfam or something like that. It should be professional with strict climate financing definition, and we are expecting one figure for climate financing. It should not be different. Maybe as I am practicing climate finance, but I am also confused. You know, actually, what is going on the international level on climate financing issues? But maybe we can hope better future, as the previous US government stalled $2 billion for the Green Climate Fund. Maybe this new US government maybe allocate more money to the Green Climate Fund, maybe with the good relationship with the USA, other European countries, other donor developed countries, maybe channel more funding to. We can hope so in near future, but still now it is not optimistic funding channel through international windows. And as Professor Mizan and others said, that due to problematic international scenario, climate financing flow is not very encouraging. And regarding national climate financing, I think one thing we should focus on that. We have dedicated funding, but we are investing around 1% of our GDP. If we consider our GDP size, then it should be around at least $3 billion we are investing for the local fund, for the national fund, for climate linked activities. I think this is a major issue. What we are, so it is not only climate change trust, it is not enough money. But what we are doing, but knowingly or unknowingly, by calculating or not calculating, we are investing a lot for climate change linked activities in our country. And maybe, I don't know, it is going to increase in future. One thing, just I'm going to complete, going to complete my saying that climate linked calculation is to some extent difficult issue, because sometimes we cannot separate it from the development. Climate linked activities and development is so much interlinked that sometimes it is really difficult to allocate, to make climate linked budget. But we can calculate the expenditure on climate linked activities, and that's what we are doing now. So thank you very much for inviting me again. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Rabbi sir. So once again, I guess from your intervention, it's clear that we need to start focusing on domestic financing systems, because accessing international financing continues to be challenging for us. And I guess what you said in the end, that is often difficult to distinguish between development finance and climate finance, and that often complicates the process. And I think this acts as a very good segue to our next speaker. So I would now like to invite Dr. Nurun, madam, to basically speak about how climate change is being considered within various national mainstreaming processes. Dr. Nurun is the Joint Chief of the Programming Division of the Planning Commission, and he's been engaged for a very long time in mainstreaming climate change action within national development planning in Bangladesh. She's also presently the project director of the National Resilience Program, which is being developed by the government with support from UNDP. So, Dr. Nurun, if you could kindly share some of your thoughts on how do we ensure that local needs and priorities are reflected in various development planning procedures, and particularly in light of the national resilience plan? Over to you, Nurun.
Yes, thank you very much. This is Nurun from Planning Commission. Thank you for inviting me to say a few words. And thank you, the Gobeshona organizers, for hosting such a wonderful conference. And I've been hearing during the last 2 days some very interesting sessions, which has shed some very important lights on the current problems. So briefly, I would just like to share what we're doing with the NRP. That's the National Resilience Program. Just want to briefly mention how different it's from the other projects, and then how it's contributing to getting the information from the local to the national regarding disaster risk, disaster and climate risk information. So basically, National Resilience Program is an umbrella project, and with 4 ministries. So this is the strength of this project, that we are not working in silos like we often hear that government tends to work in silos, but 4 ministers are working together to address the resilience issues. And the main driving policy is the Sendai framework. As you know, government of Bangladesh is a signatory of that framework. We are trying to implement the underlying principles there. And the ministries are Planning Commission, Disaster Ministry, Women Affairs Ministry, and Local Government Division. And under this umbrella project, with the assistance of UNDP, the programming division is doing the NRP with the aim of making the public investment risk informed and also gender sensitive. And I'm very interested to see that the theme of today's session it just goes with what we are also doing in the NRP, that there is a very important need for the local level needs are prioritized and reflected in our national climate plans, so that we can ensure that climate change programs at the policy level is facilitative of promoting appropriate climate action at the local level. And it of course requires, like from the past presentation we have seen, a very important concerted efforts from all the stakeholders involved, from national to local, from private to NGOs and civil society. So the theme of the NRP is to not only to address the public investment, because we've just been hearing from Ranjit sir, how we are tracking the government's expenditure, government's budget, how much it is climate sensitive. But also in NRP, we are going to address the issue of the private sector resilience. So I want to just briefly mention that, then go back to the public investment. So in the private sector, the resilience of the country, the GDP growth, we are trying to, our government has set the goal for, in 2041 to become a developed country where the targeted GDP is at least 9%. And because of the pandemic, we have faced a setback. And also our study shows that how our disasters from over the last 30 years, and also the climate-induced disasters having had a negative impact on the GDP growth, at least to the Southeast Asia region and also Bangladesh. So studies confirm that it will have a very direct impact on the average GDP growth, and also the damage it will cause on the economy, and the loss in terms of loss of livelihoods and assets. Although Bangladesh has come a long way from the disaster response, successful disaster response initiatives, to having very better disaster risk reduction measures, and we have been successful in reducing the number of deaths, but still the volume in terms of the monetary amount of the loss is still great, and it is increasing over the last few years. And also the last disaster from the Amphan, also it did cause some havoc in terms of some asset damages and property damages, etc. So, but it's not only on the public aspect, but the private, we have to consider the business sector, our export and import sector. So what we're doing in the NRP, we want to address the issue that the private sector needs to be resilient, and that is also part of the Sendai framework theme. So what we did is we study. Studies always give some evidence to the government, like where the problem lies and what can be done. So successfully, we have done a study on the based on the consultation from the local level. That's in the Chittagong Chamber of Commerce. That is the waterlogging. You know, the waterlogging is a big issue in many parts of the country, and we conducted a study on the Khatunganj area. What are the economic impacts now, and what are the impacts that will be there because of the waterlogging situation due to the climate risks. And the study showed it will be increasing unless we take drastic measures. The business people will be suffering, and the economy there will also be at a loss. And also we're doing a risk profiling. As I said, government needs some studies, and the studies are done by the experts from the academia, our development partners, and our technical organizations. And they give us very valuable data, information, and the knowledge to develop the policies. So what we're doing is that we are addressing developing risk profile for the industry in the Chittagong area, because that's the very important business hub. And so the climate risk related disasters, the hazards such as cyclone, storm surge, and salinity have been considered for up to 2050, and the risk profiling is underway, which will help the business people there to make important decisions about what additional measures need to be done to make their business more resilient, etc. And and having said that, we know that the government is not only doing the planned way of investment for its own public investment, but also for the private investment. Prime Minister also has the vision that the private investment would also be in a planned way. So, you know, the BEZA, Bangladesh Economic Zones Authority, has developed the zones, economic zones. So we will do some develop business continuity plan, BCP, that is already underway in some countries. And we think that will be a very good guideline for those areas for the business community to follow when a disaster strikes, to be prepared, so that we can really become resilient, not fall back, but we can stand back on our feet again. So that those things are underway. And we hope those policies will be endorsed by the national government, and the concerned ministries will follow up with those. So we're working on that. And having said on the private sector, now I go back to our public investment. So how can we address the whole issue? So what are the strengths of our economy? We already have a very multifaceted, a big structure of the government. 58 ministries and their divisions and organizations are undertaking projects in their annual development program. So it's a big number. And if you count the organizations, it's like almost 200. And our climate budget is giving a very fantastic report on how much of our yearly budget is climate sensitive, and it is increasing. But so so far I understand that it is not enough to make our overall public investment really climate sensitive. So is it in terms of the policies we have, like the BCCSP, and we have the 8 fiber plan, which has been approved in December and will be printed soon. We have the Delta plan, thinking of 100 years. And like, for example, Delta plan, what it has done, it has considered the business as usual approach. So like the previous speaker, Fazle sir, was saying that there is a difficulty in the definition of climate finance. And when we design a project, how can we really understand which activity will be really due to the climate, or will it be just pure development? But I think that there's a solution around it. So what we're doing in NRP, we are developing information tool, because we have so much information on the hazards. You know, the government agreed hazards, 12 hazards in this standing order of disaster from the Minister of disaster. So we have this hazard information, we have the climate models, we have the information on the exposures in our 64 districts, and we have the information on the vulnerabilities. For example, the first two studies showed in the Gaibanda and the coastal region what the vulnerabilities are, and also they suggested what the solution should be and why what were the problems for not implementing. So the ground level study is also, I think, agreeing with the science that which areas of our country is vulnerable. So if we can have an information system that is standardized and comprehensive and verified with the experts. So that's what we're doing in NRP. We are calling it Digital Risk Information Platform, to at least have a district-based risk information data, so that it will help the project designers from those organizations that have very climate sensitive projects, like the Water Development Board, Agriculture Extension, Roads Department, or any other department that will have a very big projects involving land acquisition, big construction. They can have an understanding of the risks. So my question is, do we really understand the meaning of the risks from the disaster and climate? Is it low or high or medium? So how much do we spend on the solutions for that risk? What will be the level of the climate change adaptation activity or the DRR activity? Is it the level of 1 or 2 or 3, 4, 5? There is, I mean, of course, there's a limitation of the resource, but I think this evidence-based information of science will guide the planners to determine or pinpoint what will be the appropriate climate change adaptation measures from the such risk informations. First, we are starting with the risk atlas, and we will have, I think, risk atlas, and then the identifying the climate change adaptation options and costing it and prioritizing it, then including in the projects. So the more we do it, the first, the BCCSAP was done in 2009, and based on that, we have had the trust fund, very successful initiative of the government of Bangladesh, although there are many challenges. But my question is, should we have a separate, there is a need for a separate fund maybe so far to keep this idea for the mainstream, or to keep this idea that, or fast track the climate change expenditures. But shouldn't our whole of the government investment, so that's the question to all the panelists, be designed in such a way that the climate change issue is mainstream from the beginning? And if we can do that with all the evidence, research, and very correct and rich information system, we will have very good projects, and the number of projects will automatically decrease, and we will only have the projects that are needed to address the climate change issues in that area. For example, Mizan sir was saying that we have this problem with our projects implement system. Some weaknesses are there, that we have projects in the wrong places, priority areas are not getting the funding, and also our implementation monitoring partner, that's IMED, are unable to do the monitoring properly. But if we can really think of the way we want to solve our problems through the projects, so really reprioritize the way you do the project planning, streamlining it with the policies such as our 8-fiber plan and the BCCSAP. And so that will be very helpful and manageable. So we have to think of the government structure. The government isn't increasing the expertise, like the number of ministries and organizations are there. As a public servant myself, I can do much within my service, my time. So I can do much if I'm more oriented, I'm more aware, more trained. So that's the only way I think we can work with the system. So more information, science-based, evidence-based information, IT-based information, and capacity building to the organizations that are addressing the climate change adaptation measures. So NRP is doing the digital information systems called DRIP, and we hope to launch it in March. So it will not be available just for the government departments, but also I think other stakeholders who would like to see use it for their own the project planning can be benefited. And lastly, I want to say two more things, because local information as helps our feeds into the national plans, as all of you mentioned. We also found from a study based on hotspots, Delta plan is hotspots because it's already a public document, that the local people there, the local Upazila government and the community suggested some of the activities for resilient resilient Upazila. And they also batch with the ideas that have come up here. We are calling it national resilience activities. So we are going to publish that document. And one change that the government has done in the planning system, in the 5-year plan that, we are doing the 5-year planning method, we are trying to make our monitoring results framework more robust. So it has more indicators and more robust indicators of whole of the economy. So it is better than the last 7th 5-year plan, I hope. So if we can follow that result framework, and we have, I think, very good indicators for the disaster and climate change. So the Planning Commission can, for the whole of the economy, can monitor the plan, the implementation of the plan in terms of where we have progressed with our climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction. So that is, I think, a change. And it will help the IMED to work on our mainstreaming climate change adaptation and DRR in the regular monitoring practice, which is more of the financial issues. And lastly, I just want to say that how we have incorporated the local ideas in the national plans, not just for the private sector business, but also, as I said, the hotspot area studies. We have tried to also reflect it in the 8-5-year plan. I would just want to conclude by on a note on capacity building. And I know Saleem sir is here, that I think I once asked him that capacity building, I've been hearing it since I've joined the SERV government. And so, but there's no end to capacity building increasing, there's no end to learning. And the issues of climate finance is so broad. For example, even the definition of climate finance maybe is not clear. And there are so many sources of climate finance. And still the problem is, how can the government, whole of the government, come together to address this problem? Because it is very, very important. We cannot go back. We are already on that path to, moving for a resilient economy. We cannot slow down. So as an official of Planning Commission, I would like to work on how we can speed up the process of mainstreaming the climate change issues in our planning system, rather than slowing it down. Some people say that it's reform takes time, but if we can put an effort with our own resources, I think it's possible. And so this is the way of getting information from the local level to the national, from the NRP. And also we are doing it gender sensitive. We are trying to ensure that it is gender sensitive. And our local government division partner, they are trying to look at the whole of the local LGDs structure all over the country and make it more resilient with an asset management strategy. And we're also having a gender marker tool by the LGD, and so to help the projects to understand how much it is gender sensitive. So and the last point is the capacity building.
Sorry, no, madam.
Madam, in the interest of time, can you just...
Okay. Okay, so now I wind up because that was my last point. So the NRP is going to do the capacity building in a sustainable way. We will have some MOUs with the government's national training institute. So when even after the project, we can continue with the very good trainings that have come up, and we hope it will be a success. And also the disaster impact assessment tool. I just forgot to mention, we have developed for the government planners and DPP who does the DPPs, the development project proposals. So with such tools and information systems and capacity building manuals, we hope we can have we can move more towards a more resilient economy. Thank you very much for your patient hearing and look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nurun, madam, and it was great to hear from you on the various national level programming, and particularly the National Resilience Program. We also know that the government of Bangladesh is currently in the process of formulating the National Adaptation Plan. So we have Mr. Mirza Shawkat Ali, who's the Director of Climate Change and International Convention at the Department of Environment under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. And I would like to invite Mr. Shawkat Ali to share the experiences of the NAP formulation process and how the formulation of NAP is taking into consideration the needs and of priorities at the local level. So over to you, Shawkat sir.
Thank you, Riyadh. Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Good morning to all. Assalamu alaikum. I just want to, I think we have very limited time, so I shall try to be brief. At first, I would like to appreciate the presentation made by Dr. Mizan Khan and other colleagues. It was very nice and informative presentation. But before I go to NAP issues, I want to raise a few issues that I think as government official, I need to share, because there was some question from Dr. Mizan Khan about the allocation of resources. You know, from the beginning of the trust fund, I think already Shakila has mentioned, we are trying to improve the allocation of resources. Specifically, I want to mention that I am one of the members of the technical committee from where actually we approve the projects, and we are trying to allocate resources as best as possible. We are trying to allocate resources according to several kinds of priority of the government. But to do that efficiently, we are actually, that Shakila has already mentioned, we are trying to develop guidelines, and with Dr. Ainun Nishat, I'm also one of the member of the committee to prepare the guidelines, and we are trying to develop the guidelines so that in the future we can allocate resources. And if I'm allowed to share my experience of last 3-4 years as the technical committee member, I think we try to allocate resources according to the best availability or the quality of the project proposals, and also to the vulnerability and I mean vulnerable regions that is we consider during the allocation of resources, because our resources is not infinite. So we try to do as much as possible, justify our allocation of resources. But to make that efficiently, we are trying to develop that guidelines. With that, I want to mention that Department of Environment is actually implementing few projects. If I give some examples, then you will realize that how actually we actually develop the project, and where and how we incorporate, I mean, the priorities of the local level needs. So I want to mention that at the moment we are implementing one project which we call ecosystem-based approaches to adaptation, which is a LDCF project, and we are trying to implement that project in two drought-prone Barin region and Howard wetland areas. And in these two projects, if you go through the project proposals, we actually, when we developed the project, we actually went to these two vulnerable regions, and then got information from the local communities, and accordingly we have developed the project proposal. It's a $5.2 million project which is being implemented with the help of Barind Authority and also Haur and Haur Board, where they are working in the wetland areas. Another project we are implementing at the moment is LDCF project, which is the name of the project is like integrating climate change adaptation into sustainable development pathways of Bangladesh. This is a $5.7 million project, and we have taken 5 agroecological zones, and we have tried to incorporate as much as possible the local communities so that the fund goes to the local people. And certainly we have done the studies before we have involved the local, integrated these to the local level people. The third project is LDCF2, Building Climate Resilient Livelihood in Vulnerable Landscape in Bangladesh. This is a $10 million project, and we are developing this project with Food and Agriculture Organization. And the major component of this will be implemented by Department of Agriculture Extension. And we have covered like Chittagong Hilltrack region. We have covered northwestern region and southwestern region. And also these will go to the local communities. The fourth project I want to mention is from the Adaptation Fund Board. We have got approval from the Adaptation Fund Board of $9.5 million project. The project is like Adaptation Initiative for Climate Vulnerable Offshore Small Islands, which will be in Chor fashion, and Chorland in Bangladesh, which is in the Rangpur region. So there we are planning to construct 900 houses, and we are going to support local communities with different livelihood options, so that not only their living standard is improved, but also they get some sort of livelihood support so that they can live a decent life. So these are the 4 projects, and I want to mention specifically because this shows that our intervention, all the projects that we are developing from the government, at least from the Department of Environment, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, those are concrete adaptation projects, and these are trying to link the local people in the process. So after that, I want to also mention the NCVA project that we did with the support of GIZ, Nationwide Climate Vulnerability Assessment. And this, when we did the Nationwide Climate Vulnerability Assessment, we did a series of local level consultations. And I specifically remember during the first workshop, we were not happy with the participation of the local communities. So the secretaries, our director general, and ourselves, we wanted to make sure that the local community, especially the farmers, the union parishad chairman, union members, local CBOs, not only like the government officials or the agencies present in a district level, we want to ensure that the farmers for whom, or the local communities, or the fishermen for whom the project will be designed, they are present. So I also wanted to share that. Now let me discuss about the NAP issue that my main focus should be. In this case, you know, we have identified 4 major sectors. The first sector is agriculture, second is water, third is coastal areas, coastal region, and the fourth is urban areas. But we have identified 2 other areas which we consider very important: health and gender, as a cross-cutting 2 other sectors that will be covered under the NAP. And in case of NAP, next week, actually, we are going to start 12 consultation at local level. The first one was actually planned from 21 to 23rd, but unfortunately, due to cold wave and due to the visibility, low visibility in rivers and like coastal region, we decided to defer this. The first project, first consultation was planned in Chor Kukrimukri, Chor fashion. So you understand that when we are going to develop the NAP, we certainly want to link the local level needs when we prepare our NAP. So that was my presentation, main discussion points. But I want to mention one last point, like the challenges what we face. At this moment, I consider the challenges is like local communities are not well aware. If I share my experience in the technical committee, when you get different project proposals from like CBOs, from even from like Union Porichad, Poroshaba, for different kinds of financial support from the trust fund, we found that the project that was prepared by these local communities or the local level units are not up to the mark. And those actually could be like street lighting, which has really little significance with climate change activities, specifically adaptation activities. So under the NAP project, we are going to enhance the capacity of local people, local CBOs, local government units. So there are a lot of activities that we are going to conduct in the local level. We have 14 deliverables, and out of these, many activities is focused towards the local communities. And finally, I want to mention that I consider at this moment, I think the understanding of the government agencies, the planning commission is much better now. We are trying to incorporate local communities, local needs to our national plans. But the challenge is availability of resources, as mentioned by my previous speakers, that government is allocating, like according to the annual development plan, around $2 to $3 billion if we take into consideration the last decade's involvement of different agencies or ministries in implementing adaptation projects. But it stands as $2 to $3 billion. But specifically from climate change trust fund and other UNFCCC-led funds, this is not adequate compared to the requirement of the local communities. So certainly we need to plan nicely. At the same time, we need to allocate resources both from domestic and international agencies. I forgot to mention one issue. We have established a global commission on adaptation, and there we are planning to develop a project, hopefully $14 to $15 million, and we are going to design this project this year. There also we are trying to incorporate nature-based solution, and we are trying to focus this in Sundarban and Southwest region. That will be also be, we are designing at the moment, and hopefully that will be also addressed toward the local communities, ecosystem-based adaptation or nature-based solution. With this, I want to conclude my discussion. Thank you very much for giving me the floor.
Thank you so much, Shawkat sir. So for everyone's information, we were supposed to end the session in 12, but we'll go 10 minutes extra, and we'll now move on to the final part of the session. I believe there has been a number of questions that have been posted on the chat box. I apologize sincerely that in the interest of time, we may not be able to address it, but I will try to sort of cluster all of this into a broad set of statements, and maybe in the closing remarks, our experts could shed light on some of these. And I also hope that during some of the ongoing discussions, a lot of these questions were addressed to a certain extent. So essentially, I think the questions revolved around, while we acknowledge that climate local needs and priorities are considered in national policy instruments, but what sort of instruments or financing mechanisms have actually been effective? And what are the factors that ensure they were effective, and how were local authority stakeholders engaged in adaptation planning to do so? And what are the current institutional gaps or capacity building gaps where we may need to come in with additional action? So having said that, now I would like to request Dr. Saleemul, who's the director of the International Center for Climate Change and Development, to share his reflections and insights on the overall proceedings of the session, and also reflecting on some of the concerns and questions raised by the various panelists in the chat box. So, Dr. Saleemul,
Riadat, are you going to ask Atiq and Nishat first? Let them speak, and then I'll close.
I don't think Nishat sir joined. So I was hoping after you, it just will be Atiq sir. So do you want Atiq sir to go first and you want to close?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
But
no
yeah, I'll
problem.
close.
Okay, sir. So Atiq sir, are you still on board?
Is Atiq with us? Yes, Atiq, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Please.
Go
Can
ahead.
you hear me? Can you
Yes,
hear
go
me?
ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay. For me, it's been an excellent morning. Uh, I learned a lot. That's my personal advantage. On the other hand, the session was well structured, too many speakers, but all of them are valuable. And the structure was good. We got some very good perspective from the ground up, and still at the local level, I am extremely impressed, irrespective of the language. The content of the speakers and their clarity of many of the issues and their clarity of not understanding what is not easy to understand. Now, climate change is complex. Climate change development linkage is difficult. As Mizan said, climate finance definitions, nobody really knows, needs to be resolved. So given all those, we got some excellent input from all the people. I don't want to go through the numbers. I have taken profuse notes myself, and if you, I'm sure you are keeping a record of the proceedings, so you should be able to do a very good input, and there is enough there for a real substantive write-up on what is going on. One of the issue is that when what Mizan was talking about OECD language and affiliation and understanding of how much money vis-a-vis Oxfam and the supporting group, and there is a huge difference between those of the order of factor of 2, if not 3. So, and the loan and the grant is emerging as an issue. Less grant, more loan, and adaptation was perceived to be grant all the way. Now, in the question of the overall allocation, it's about 30, less than 33% for LDCs in the Green Climate Fund, where we fought a big battle and won the battle right of minimum 50% of the funds for adaptation, and that hasn't come through. So this is a lesson learned at the global level, but coming from local experiences. Similarly, there is a hope that US entry might bring something in. I am not that sure that will happen quickly. Let's remember that every American president has only one objective, that is the American population and the service to them. We are there, rest of the planet is there, but that is secondary. So we must understand what is reality in this. So that is the financial issue, and lot has been talked about the criteria of adaptation projects. And this has been central in many, many cases, that what is efficacy, how do we define it, is it the amount of money? You know, when our government evaluates the project, end of the project, what was told in the project, have we spent that money in the same, headline? So that's good for saying, okay, project was okay, probably there was no misplacement of fund, but did that fund work for the people and the ecosystem that we intended to? That question never gets answered. So that's something we have to get much more deeper as we get into the projects of local level. We have heard from Prodip Kumar of CSRL, and we have learned that a lot is being done, and there has been some IMED field investigation and on local knowledge, experience, on facilitation and social watchdog has been put in, both in Bola and Zoil Islam has mentioned about Bola from the Coast Trust, and good examples have been given. But main issue is designing projects which is pro-poor. First of all, appropriate adaptation. Pro-poor, delivered well, money is spent properly and efficiently. And that learning has been absorbed. So it's not just monitoring evaluation, it's monitoring evaluation learning. So next time we don't do the same repetitive mistake, but make it more effective and more efficient. So the whole accountability, achievements on the accountability and transparency, there has been a question of the quality of input and proper utilization of funds on the efficiency issue and on the transparency issue, access to, who has accessed it, and then subsequent lobbying for the decision maker. And we have heard from Bhola excellent experience of people, and one of the experience of how Hilsa, being a commodity for the nation, is being lost in the process of enhanced degradation of the soil and increase of the soil salinity. And so people are observant. They are getting their science quite right. Now, for us as scientists, the global policymakers, those who came at the end, and those of us who are engaged in climate change strategy action plan and all the rest, and the revisions and everything, our job is to put into structures that is understandable both at the level of the Planning Commission, Ministry of Environment and Forest, Disaster Management, others, giving them solutions, those are doable, but at the same time, gather the information from the grassroots, take it up, gather the requirements of the planning process and take it down. That sort of intermediary job and linkage has to be made stronger. And many of the issues of climate change, as I heard the whole thing, was basically hydroclimatic world. 80% of the discussion was about hydroclimate world. It's about rivers, it's about ponds, it's about production, it's about growth, it's about agriculture, but which needed water. So that has been very, very useful. On the panel discussion, we had also very excellent input from Ranjit Kumar, and I've learned a lot about what projects are going on and how inclusive budgeting is being enhanced. Now, the climate budget is an interesting concept. It doesn't mean that this is basis on which money is spent. It is a backward looking for how much money this ministry has used, which is climate sensitive. Now, climate sensitive is one thing, climate allocated is quite another. I could be sensitive to a lot of things, and 10% of my sensitivity makes that whole 100% come into that world. So it will take me quite a bit of time to explain, so I don't want to go into this. There is a contradiction built in there. So sensitivity is good. So really, this figure comes to $2 to $3 billion at various numbers that have been put. But it is sensitivity and not real actual allocation. It is perceived amount of money spent, which has an association of climate change. Now, that's very different from climate allocation and climate framework. On the other hand, we heard about the extreme events all the way, such as the flood. Nobody mentioned about the 4-month flood now, but that has been a great disaster for Bangladesh in the last 6 months. A 4-month, 4 floods for the people and communities. And I have a woman, a lady with we work regularly, and I asked her, Appa, how are you doing in this situation with COVID? And she said, for the 4 months, I have been between knee deep and waist deep water. Don't ask me about COVID. That's not a luxury I cannot afford. So they could not even recognize the dense intensity of COVID, which has, made the whole world turbulent and much more ineffective. And they are being made ineffective as well, but their real life problems are much more deeper affected by climate change. Shakila has very well and very nicely presented the processes of 700 projects and 425 completed projects. But at the same time, she has recognized that there needs to be improvement, and some of the beneficiaries are being looked into by both ICCCAD and BCAS to develop better contract and better ways of monitoring, evaluation, and learning through this process as we go along. Fazle bin Sadeque also took this issue quite seriously, and we had the critical issue was that the figure that we learn from various countries or various associations that comes into Green Climate Fund is low, but their capacity to deliver, and he has been working for 2 years even to get the project through, where PKSF is already allocated to be a direct access partner. So if direct access partner doesn't get it, how can an ordinary NGO at the local level or whatever can approach GCF? So that whole thing is a really the typical global phenomenon, and those of us who have worked with the World Bank in the early days, incompetent World Bank to a smart World Bank now, the GCF also has to become smart, much faster and sharper. Nurun, Nahar, excellent presentation on the NRP, and on the National Resilience Program, UNDP is with the help going ahead and doing lots of useful things there, and that will hopefully get into the process. So what we have seen here, and Shawkat, Mirza Shawkat has also said the various large projects, including NAP, that is going on, and we are all party to NAP as we move along, and the various large projects. So I just was calculating Shawkat's 4 projects of the order of average of $5 to $10 million, say $8 million on average. So it's good $32-35 million just there on the various projects that the government is working on. So money, finance is there and not there. The question is, Bangladesh government is spending a lot, huge amount. Disaster management ministry is doing well. They have capacity, they are building, but they are better at delivering when disaster happened. Unfortunately, during the COVID period, that disaster management could not be done well for various reasons and the risks to the delivery agents, etc. But lot of progress has been made and actions have been heard. The whole issue of climate finance, from the definitional problem through the delivery to different level of mechanism, the last word is community participation, community access, community welfare, and it is the community may not be able to reduce their climate risks, but have they got, rather than affecting the cause, on the impact, have they been able to reduce the impacts on them by better management? Even in a disaster, I have always said that rather than making new shelters and big shelters, rather than taking the people to shelters, bring the shelters to people. And there are whole mechanisms how all school, colleges, everything near every village can be made into shelters, multi-purpose projects. So there are various ways of looking at it, and community participation, the community has to be mobilized, and the whole Bangladesh community are pretty well impressed, pretty well served. NGOs are there. Unfortunately, during the whole COVID period, NGOs have been hugely undermined in their efforts and in their resources. So there remains another issue. Large number of issues, great opportunities, very nice talks. I'm very impressed with the overall thing. Thank you very much. I don't want to take it.
Thank you so much, Atiq sir, for very well summarizing the entire session and reflecting back on everyone's interventions. So in the interest of time, I guess we'll rush through things. I'll now just like to invite Dr. Saleemul to quickly come in and share some closing remarks, and we'll wrap this session up afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Riyada. Thank you very much, Atiq, for that excellent summary. I am actually not going to, can you hear me all right, Riyada?
Yep, yes, we can. Very good.
Okay, good. So I'm not going to speak about what's already been spoken or repeat anything. What I just want to do is to contextualize today's session to let people know this is not a standalone webinar where we are discussing only the things that the Bangladeshis are doing, government, non-government, academics, etc. but this is a session in a much bigger global conference on locally led adaptation called the Gobeshona Conference, which we have been running now for today is the 6th day of a 7-day long conference. We have had um, 6 days already, 5 days completely done. We're doing it as a 24/7 conference series. We have sessions running from Asia Pacific region for 8 hours, and then Africa, Europe region for 8 hours, and then the Americas for another 8 hours, and then again the way around. So we've done well over 60 sessions over the last few hours. In fact, while this session was going on, I was also listening to a session on Australia that was going on at the same time. And so the point I'm trying to make is that this is a global audience that we were speaking to today, not just a Bangladeshi audience. The Bangladeshis, we can talk to each other anytime, all the time. But in this particular event, we've been talking to a much bigger global audience, and not only those who are listening live. Our experience with these sessions is that once the recording, which we will record and put up, once the video recording goes up, you get a much larger number of people watching it in their own time, at their own leisure, who are interested in knowing what happened here. So we will be doing the same with this session. It will be uploaded on the website in due time, and the report of the session will also be disseminated, and people will be able to come in and see what is happening in Bangladesh. So this was, in a sense, a showcasing of what is being achieved, including acknowledgement of the deficiencies and the imperfections of what is being done. But certainly we are trying our best, and that, I think, is the greatest message coming out from all of the discussions that we had today. There's a tremendous amount of willingness to cooperate, to collaborate, to learn from each other. Sometimes we might criticize each other, and that might go a little bit too much, or people might feel a bit sensitive, but it is done in the best interest of improving the delivery for the most vulnerable people. And that is the connection to the theme of this global conference, which is on locally led adaptation. How can the adaptation being done by the vulnerable communities be enhanced, be supported, be enabled, be uh, uh, led by them rather than others coming to their rescue? So it's very nice that all our partners today were able to share that experience. We look forward to working with them. Let me end by also saying that we have decided from the Gobeshona Secretariat that we will not go back to the old form of the conference where we used to congregate at IUB over 4 or 5 days. We are now going to retain this online virtual conference format in future every year. And we are going to keep it a global conference. We've had a huge amount of interest from all over the world in participating. In fact, we had a very good session with the GCF itself on their enhanced direct access mechanism that they are trying to roll out. And so we will continue to do this every year. And so I want to invite our partners in the Prakash program to plan next year's event as well. And so bring some more experiences by then. And hopefully each year we will show incremental progress, not just state the same thing over and over again, but in share implementation. And my final word in terms of advice to the organizers is, next time around, less show and tell, more reflection. We want to learn what is happening, not just tell me you've done 10 projects or this project or that project. That's very good. I'm not undermining it. But I do really want us to reflect on what have we learned so far from our experiences. And so I will leave the organizers with thanks and this thought. I am inviting you back a year from now to do another session. But as I said, the next time around, we want to hear some real reflections on your part on the work that you're doing. So with that, Riadat, shall I close or will you close?
Sir, you can go ahead and close it.
Okay, so let me thank everybody for participating. We've gone well over time, but it's been an excellent session. And I thank you for your patience and for sticking with us to the end. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.